Good morning. Here I go again. I'm scared, and I will explain. I'm going to talk first about the Canadian character as I remember it, okay? Canadians, as a people, tend to be self effacing, quiet. Um, my friends say apathetic. I think we're just kind of la di da, easygoing, relaxed, laid back, tolerant people, very tolerant people. But, and I think of my father when I say this, and my brother, and in some degrees myself, quietly competent. We're not blowhards, we're not braggarts, we don't tend to crow about ourselves and our accomplishments as a nation. Some of this you don't see so much in the cities, but when you get into rural Canada, more so you see that, I think. My own experience, like the people I've contacted or been in contact with from rural Ontario, hunters and people who actually live out there. What you see in the cities, I don't think really typifies those old Canadian values: hard work, self-reliance. The problem with a lot of the new immigrants coming into this country under the stupidity of the Liberals, big problem, big problem. There is no orientation. And I'll get into this. Look at the Middle Eastern temperament as a whole. Again, broad strokes, as a whole. They're much more volatile, not as well educated, much more impulsive than Canada or Canadians tend to be. Is it the climate? I don't know. That made us more phlegmatic. I don't know. But we are much more reasonable and deliberate. So you take that volatile, impulsive, predominantly ill-educated Middle Eastern mentality, throw them into Canada without any orientation. I see big problems. Now I'm going to speak about perception and orientation. Orientation particularly. When I worked in Saudi Arabia, we were given an orientation lecture as to the do's and the don'ts, modes of behavior, their attitudes, what you can and cannot do, what will get you arrested, what will get you publicly punished in the square. Okay, some of the things we know, thievery, things like that. But there were other offenses that would not occur to a Canadian. I understood. I traveled before. I worked in Saudi Arabia. I traveled before I had a grasp of the fact that in other nations you have to find out the do's and don'ts of that country, right? So we got an orientation lecture and things that would not occur to the average Canadian, like if an elevator comes along and there's a lone Saudi woman in the elevator, don't get on the elevator. That's very offensive to them. You're a single male, she's an unaccompanied female. No, no, no. Don't get on the elevator. Wait for one that has got more people in it, but do not get on. Don't make eye contact with a Saudi woman. You know, you're going bypassing each other on an escalator. Don't make eye contact with a Saudi woman by herself. And if she's with her male escort, that could be construed as a come on. You see where I'm going with this? There's an orientation. Now you're taking these people coming here to Canada, allowed government saying, come one, come all. Where's the orientation? The do's and the don'ts. What is right? What is wrong? What is acceptable behavior in Canada? None of that. Who's teaching them? They're hearing from friends, maybe, but they're just thrown willy-nilly into this country and kind of like, well, you figure it out. Seriously? So what is scaring me about this is their perception. The Muslim migrants particularly, their perception of Canada, Canadians. To them, we are merely white, Caucasian, okay? Or brown or whatever, but our attitudes are totally alien to them, totally incomprehensible to them. Our modes of behavior, totally incomprehensible to them because no one's ever taught them. So they're going to come here with their attitudes. They're going to gravitate towards enclaves of their own because they're in a foreign country and there's that siege mentality or ghetto mentality, like to get comfortable. You want to be in amongst your own people with the sights, the sounds, the smells of home. Totally understandable. Okay. But like I said, not an educated people. By Canadian standard, these are not an educated people. So their attitudes about North America, they don't really know too much of the difference between Canada and America, one. B, a lot of their attitudes about North America are formed from what they see in the movies. Now, I encountered this in Saudi Arabia. Again, what you've got now are people who have not been given a grounding, a background, either understanding the Canadian culture. Now, I don't blame them too much as I do blame the Liberal government, because how can a Liberal or a federal government that denies or negates Canadian culture teach Canadian culture to a new arrival? I mean, the stupidity of it. These people are, what the Liberal government, the federal government is doing is tantamount to treason, as far as I'm concerned. So you've got these people, like I said, coming here. Right now, it's winter. Not too bad. A lot of them will fort up, like the cold snap that Toronto's got. They're not equipped for this in terms of temperament. It's totally alien to them. Again, alien culture. They don't know how to handle this kind of weather. Summer's coming. This is what is scaring me. Summer is coming. I live in an area where there's several high schools, okay? On occasion, I try to avoid public transit, let's say from between, let's say, 2:30 and 4 o'clock, if possible, okay? Because it's all crowded up with school kids. Being an older Canadian guy, okay? I'm seeing these high school girls, and they're 14, 15, 16. They're kids, okay? My friends and I have talked about this. What the hell is what they're putting in their cereal? Because they don't look like kids anymore. Okay. They look like young women, young men. Physically, they're bigger than they were, let's say, at comparable age in my time. More developed physically than at a comparable age in my generation, in my era. But they're kids. You got these girls dressing like they're pop idols. Far too much skin on display by my lights, okay? Perfectly normal today. No one thinks anything of it. Burgeoning womanhood and kind of proud of new curves, but they're kids. Oblivious of consequence and oblivious of what they're presenting, possibly presenting to other new Canadians. They're kids. They're children. What we're seeing, look what's happening in Europe. And the seeds of that are here. Canadians, grassroots Canadianism is starting to emerge again. You're getting, like I said, the Yellow Vest movement. You've got Pegida. You've got more, the media calls them right wing. I see them more Canadian value oriented organizations, okay, that want to keep Canada Canadian. Look at the protests, the truckers, the oil and gas industry, protesting the stupidity of Ottawa. This mess that's coming, I put this squarely on the shoulders of the Liberals. Note, I do not say Trudeau. If you wonder why, go back to my previous post about stop blaming Trudeau, okay? I think if you haven't seen it, see it, because it'll explain. The Liberals are probably the most un-Canadian, damaging party that I have ever seen. A total, almost negation of Canadian values. having lived and worked in the Middle East, having talked to these people, seen them, the hypocrisy there, misogynistic, male dominated culture, again, not well educated. As a rule, like I exclude the Iranians because the association I've had with Persians, as they like to be called, I found most of them, the ones who are here, I found them as a people, they're not Arab. They consider themselves Persian. By and large, they are much better educated, much more civilized than a lot of the people, let's say, from Egypt or from the lower classes of Egypt or Saudi Arabia or Syria. Lebanese, again, very intelligent. Most of them that I met, Jordanians, again, much the same, but they're not leaving Jordan as a peaceful country. But you've got Yemenis, Ethiopians, Somalians. These are not an educated people. They were inculcated with this whole Muslim, with the tenets of Islam. Where this is going to bear negative fruit is you've got these people and they're going to perceive us being, like I said, predominantly Caucasian, as being like the Europeans. Whoa, whoa, no, 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 no. Canadian temperament is nothing at all like the European temperament. Europeans as a whole have a greater history of deference to authority, of compliance, of obedience than Canadians. We were a hardier people, a more self-sufficient people. We wanted less government, not more. All we wanted was a chance, as a rule, to make our own life. Yeah, pay our taxes, fine, but stay the fuck out of my life. I'll take care of myself. You know, Canadians have that kind of, and we still do. A lot of us have that kind of can-do attitude. Yeah, I can fix that. Yeah, I can do that. We're not like the Europeans, our European cousins. Now think of this. Summer's coming, like I said. What I see and what is scaring me, because I see this as a perfect, I'm going to lay out a scenario here that I see as perfectly plausible and scares the hell out of me. And I'll explain why. Some Muslims hanging around because they're getting free money from the government. There's no push to find jobs. There's been no orientation. They get together, as they tend to congregate, male congregants. The women do so more so in private. It's the men who can go out as a bunch of guys, sit there, drink, and chat. The women stay at home and do what they're supposed to do. So there's a bunch of Muslim migrants, and there's like 2, 3 schoolgirls coming back, 15, 16, 17-year-olds coming back from a girlfriend's place, coming back from a night out, from a dance party, from a high school get-together. So these guys attempt to chat these girls up, trying by their lights to be charming and debonair and suave. By their lights. What these girls are seeing are crude, creepy, older guys, bearded, hitting on them, ogling them, maybe starting to get a little too grabby, and then saying, yeah, I'm out of here. Well, these guys, these are women. They can't say no to me. These are merely women. So they start to push the issue. Muslim culture, from what I saw of it, not the more civilized countries, but like Saudi Arabia is a perfect example, highly sexually repressed. Getting laid for a single guy in Saudi Arabia is extremely difficult, unless you're in the higher ups. I heard from people I talked with, some of the expats, there are brothels and there are places they can go. They import sex workers, either willingly or unwillingly, from Eastern Europe, from Japan. Ooh, they love Japanese. North America, blondes. They love blondes. Scandinavia. So you can get laid if you've got the money and the contacts. But by and large, no. There's a tremendous amount of covert homosexuality in Saudi Arabia. And this from this strict Muslim country. Man, oh man, oh man. Anyways, it's much more prevalent than we here would believe. And the Saudis, of course, they don't talk about this. The hypocrisy of it. They just kind of turn a blind eye. And according, again, to the expats who had lived there a lot longer than I had, if you're the catcher, total contempt. If you're the pitcher, yeah, okay, sexual emergency, an orifice is an orifice. But if you're the catcher, you're really like lowest of the low. So like I said, you've got these people. Now, going back to that scenario I'm trying to postulate. These girls are getting hit on or grabbed or molested, maybe physically, turning these guys down. So what was going to be an attempted seduction now turns into sexual assault, groping, uh, out and out rape, like in Europe, either screaming or whatever. These girls put it forward to the cops. Cops arrest these guys. They go in front of these liberal judges who look and say, well, they have a different cultural norm. West Edmonton Mall, anybody? They have a different cultural norm, so we're just going to let them off with a warning. Canadians are galvanizing. We're starting to stand up more and more for our country, for our values, for our beliefs. The pushback, like I said, the Yellow Vest movement, the convoy that's heading to Ottawa from Alberta. God bless you, boys. Someone has got to give a wake-up call to these freaking morons. This moronic liberalism that is really out of touch with Canada and Canadians. Back to the scenario. These guys wind up in court. They get a slap on the wrist sentence. Okay. I see this. I'm not advocating this, but I see this as perfectly plausible. You've got your niece, your daughter, whatever, traumatized, upset, bad enough they got fucked over by these immigrants, but now they're being fucked over by the legal system. Now you've got the guy saying, you know what? Fuck this. We're not going to get justice under the law. We're going to do our own fucking justice and teach these boys a lesson about how to behave in Canada. I can see this erupting into street justice. I really can. We're being pushed, consistently pushed. And I know for a fact, I know a lot of people you do not want to push. We are quiet people, reasonable people, and very tolerant people. But if anybody thinks that they can just keep pushing and pushing and pushing and not get a backlash, has made a major mistake. If you look at Canadian history, when we are galvanized into action, we are a force to be reckoned with. World War I, World War II, Korean conflict. You galvanize the Canadian people and you galvanize Canadians into action, spur them into action, you're going to see a backlash against this kind of behavior. And these ones who expect the same responses that the Europeans gave to this Muslim sexual impropriety will not fly here. So I'm seeing a perfectly plausible scenario where some of these people start getting beat up. And then what happens? The cops come, they do an arrest. Maybe if you don't cover your ass sufficiently, they start doing arrests. And these people start getting slammed with excessive sentences because of Islamophobia or hate crime or whatever. Now you're getting a greater groundswell. This guy, these guys committed a sexual assault. They got a slap on the wrist. These guys spoke up for their wives or their girlfriends or their daughters or their nieces, whatever. And they're getting slammed away in the box. The push will start. The push will start. Now I want to go address specifically, and this is one thing that bugs the hell out of me. Vigilantism. Who were the vigilantes? From the reading I've done, what the original vigilantes were in the American West, basically, these were responsible, concerned citizens who were dealing with a criminal element that was out of control because the police were either outnumbered or corrupt or inefficient or all of those and unable to deal with the criminal element. Again, these people, responsible, sober-sided citizens, said, you know what? Enough is enough. The system is not protecting us. We will protect us. They armed themselves because they knew who the criminals were, the murderers, the rapists, the robbers, and they started dispensing street justice. Now, they didn't kill everybody. Some of the worst were either shot or hung, rapists and murderers. gang leaders, because they had gangs even way back then, gang leaders. But a lot of the criminal element were told, leave my area, leave this city, or what happened to them will happen to you. Is that a bad thing? When the government or the authorities cannot protect the people and the people chose to protect themselves, was this a bad thing? So when I hear the term vigilantism, kangaroo court, street justice, very often it is exactly that, justice. Oh yeah, it can go excessive and you can get haters out there who are overreacting or targeting the wrong people. There's all sorts of possible scenarios open for abuse here. But back to what vigilantism was, we'd call it an armed neighborhood watch, an armed and active neighborhood watch, if you will, if that makes it more palatable. I see this as erupting into the seeds, not of a full out-and-out civil war or even armed conflict so much as a clash of ideologies. And again, all this would be laid back at the feet of the Liberal government, of the current federal government, for not giving these new Canadians the grounding they need to understand the culture in which they now find themselves. What I would have done if I had had any say in immigration policy, we're going to take these new Canadians. Fine. None of this irregular migrants coming across the border. You're not fleeing a war-torn, brutal, violent country. You're coming from the US. You're not being excessively persecuted. You're coming from the United States. You're coming here because you get more money and all these nice health benefits and free housing and everything. So that's why they came here. If it had been up to me, the policy would have been very simple. Yes, come. You will be housed in camps, clean, neat, tidy camps. Your papers will be checked. Your history will be checked. You will be given a health exam to see if you are eligible for entry into this country or if you're going to bring diseases. You are going to be questioned as to what job skills, what do you bring to the country. You'll be fed decently, clothed decently, housed decently, family units. You will be given orientation by Canadians from your culture, Canadians who understand the way you think, understand the information you need to have, understand the mindset that needs to be corrected, so that you would be getting information from people who understand you, understand your culture. None of that from the government. Here you go, come to Canada. ESL classes? How are they going to learn English? I don't know. Well, is anybody giving them a lecture on Canadian standards and values? I don't know. Where are we going to house them? How much money is it going to cost to take them? I don't know. I feel in some ways almost like a Cassandra, if you remember your mythology. Cassandra's curse was that she could see the future, but no one would believe her. That was the curse the gods gave her. I'm not saying that this is the future, but I'm seeing this as a potential future. And perfectly plausible given what's going on here now. So what's the solution? Is there one? It would be incumbent upon the next government to start cracking down. Stop immigration until what we have now. And I mean, stop immigration except for applicants who are acceptable. Stop immigration, stop bleeding out the money, stop taking in people who are not fleeing persecution. Stop it, 100%. Total moratorium until we clear the backlog we've got. And then you have job skills we need. Well, they need workers in Alberta. They need workers in Saskatchewan. They need workers in Manitoba. They need workers in New Brunswick or BC. You want to be a Canadian? You want to avail yourself of the benefits of living in this wonderful country of ours? Earn it. Like my grandparents did, like so many of my parents, earn it. Show that you are going to benefit this country. Show us that taking you in was not a mistake. That's what I'm saying. So agree, disagree, comments are more than welcome, but I would ask that you give this a listen and consider, look around you, consider where we're heading and what we have to do to fix it. This ran over what I normally do, but I'd really appreciate any input on this. Thank you. Have a good day.